Garth Rowswell joins me now. He is the MLA for Vermilion-Lloydminster-Wainwright, and this month he was named by Premier Danielle Smith as the chair of the Alberta First Cabinet Policy Committee. He was also named as chair of that committee when she was first elected as UCP leader. Garth, how important is it for you to serve in this role? Obviously, this is a big priority for the Premier.
Yeah, well, it's like what I like about it is the process. This Ministers consult with their stakeholders and develop policies on issues that we had in our platform or issues we want to bring forward, and then they bring it to this committee to be reviewed by other ministers and private members. We do votes, we make recommendations, that goes to cabinet, and then they make their policy and come to caucus to have another shot at it. So it's really a good process, and the difference from where it used to be is that we have the backbenchers have way more input into policy development, which is great. And the experience so far is that suggestions have been listened to, and when we made a good case, it created some changes. So that's the beauty of this system.
Now, I know you've only been in this role for a couple of months now, but what are some of the issues that have already come to the committee table?
Well, the first one was the Sovereignty Act, and one of the suggestions we changed the name because it was viewed as a separatist type thing, but it wasn't. It was more a jurisdictional type thing, and so the name was changed, and then there was a concern that maybe some ministers had too much power, so amendments were made to it. So that's the highlighted example. The ministries that are involved in this that we're overseeing and that the policies will come from will be Justice, Finance and Treasury Board, Jobs, Economy and Trade, Affordability, Utilities, Environment and Parks, and then the Premier herself with Intergovernmental Affairs Minister as well. So what that is that's mostly the ministries that involve our relationship with Ottawa. So if something comes up and legislation or regulations have to be used to push back on something that we think the federal government's doing, that'll come through this committee. So it's pretty important, and that's a pretty powerful group of ministers. The other ones, Shane Getson, Grant Hunter, Chantal Jejong, and myself are the private members on it. So it's going to be a very interesting group, and we'll deal with some pretty important issues.
I know this provincial government isn't afraid of confronting the federal government when things come up that Alberta has issues with, and recently a report from the Public Policy Forum pegged the cost of transitioning to a net zero power grid by 2035 at over $1.7 trillion. Obviously, this is going to be a concern for Alberta's government. I'll just get your reaction to that.
Yeah, they want to get to net zero, but theirs is to essentially end the use of fossil fuels, which that's like 80 or 90% of our electricity is generated by that. I've grown to learn that BC is about 95% hydro. Ontario is a lot of nuclear. Quebec is hydro. So the ones that impacts the most are essentially Alberta, Saskatchewan, and mostly Manitoba also has some hydro and some nuclear as well. So those are, and the length of time it takes to build anything, or get a project done, 2035 is just unachievable. It's going to be tough enough trying to do any of this by 2050. So the pushback that we'll get within this committee is just, what's in Alberta's best interest, and because we want to develop our fossil fuel resources, and if net zero is important, then find a way to do that while still using those fossil fuels. And carbon capture, utilization, and storage is one of those things. And we got the geology we have in Alberta lends itself to that. So we think we can get there, but 2035 is just unachievable. So if they push on that, then we just have to push back.
So what exactly could that pushback look like, and would your committee play a role?
Well, if there's a regulation or a policy or a legislation that have to happen in order to push back on that, then we would do that, right? Like they would, we might create a legislation that or regulation that would just say, look, we're not going to follow that. You're impinging on our jurisdiction, and that you're out of scope. So that and if they push it, then that might take it to court, I guess, if that's where it wound up. But those types of decisions would come through the committee and be debated in the committee as to the best way to go about it, and then they would progress that to cabinet and then all of caucus. So it's a really, I'm so happy to be involved in this and specifically chairing it with some really good members in there to help represent Alberta.